And today we have with us a very special guest, Ronan Diego.
I was always the skinny kid, the small kid that was bullied at school because of that. I remember walking in the street and then passing in front of a gym and seeing big guys inside of the gym. And I dreamed of that. When I learned to rely on my body image for a sense of self-worth, I think that's when things get tricky, especially on the performance world, on the athletic world.
Because you were in extremely good shape then, right? You were a
Yeah.
bodybuilder, you had like 0% body fat.
That kind of thing.
I remember the pictures from your bodybuilding days, which is when you said you were at your lowest low.
Yeah.
And that's when the mindset shift happened.
How did you overcome?
I would say is the richest experience that somebody can have is to go through that, because what you're really learning in that process is that your worth was never outside of you.
Welcome to Wellness Club Social, Dubai's new space for real conversations about clean living and modern wellness. I'm Christina, founder of Soul Crave.
And I'm Biljana, founder of Clean Rebel. And today we have with us a very special guest, Ronan Diego. I first met Ronan on the Mindvalley stage. It was earlier this year during Mindvalley Future Human here in Dubai, and I thought he was amazing. His personal story really touched me. His story from basically being burned out and stressed and, fitter than ever, but very unhappy is something that really resonated with me. He's a holistic health coach, fitness educator and international speaker known for bridging science-based training with mindset, longevity, and real-life sustainability. Ronan is originally from Brazil, and his journey into health was deeply personal. He's openly shared that he didn't grow up as a natural athlete, and he only began his personal transformation after hitting a turning point with stress and burnout. That lived experience now shapes his approach to wellness, one that prioritizes intelligent movement, metabolic health, nervous system balance, and long-term vitality over extremes. Over the years, Ronan has coached thousands of people around the world. He's trained elite performers, he's spoken on global stages, and contributed to leading wellness platforms such as Mindvalley, as I mentioned, where he's one of the top authors, and he's known for making complex health concepts practical and achievable. We're very excited to explore his philosophy on fitness, on fasting, on mindset, and on longevity, and on what it truly means to build a body and a life that supports sustained performance and well-being. So welcome to the show, Ronan.
Thank you so much, Biljana, Christina. It's an honor. It's a pleasure. We're all here looking good. I'm ready. I'm excited. Let's do this.
It's so good to have you, Ronan.
It's amazing for me to be here. Truly, I'm feeling it.
Thank you.
I'm very
good.
excited to find out more now. So how did your journey start? It's, of course, a traditional question for us, and we will love to hear these stories. They're always inspirational and always, there's a lot of motivation as well in there.
It started a lot with bodybuilding. And then I think the question is how the bodybuilding started. I'm Brazilian. And I was always the skinny kid, the small kid that was bullied at school because of that. And so I remember walking in the street and then passing in front of a gym and seeing big guys inside of the gym. And I dreamed of that because at that time, there was a feeling that if I had a certain body, I would feel safer around other people. Yeah, because I was, being in the space that I was at, it was not safe to be in that body because I got a lot of weird treatment from other kids.
Physically safe.
Yeah. You get hit, because the bullying is like that. And so I felt like a weak boy, and I want to be a strong man. And then you look at what did the media communicate about being a strong man is like. You see, the hero of the movie is a guy with a lot of muscles. So you think, that's I saw Conan the Barbarian, right? It's the Arnold Schwarzenegger. Huh? He was Conan, I was Ronan. It was almost the same thing. I just needed to change the letter and build a bit of muscle. And so I grew up obsessed with that idea. And then, but my parents didn't allow me to exercise because they thought that if I went to the gym, I was already short and it would stunt my growth. That was the myth that we had back in the day, right? When you didn't have much scientific studies, you rely on superstitions. So the day I turned 18 years old, it's 4th of March, it was my birthday, I went to the gym. And then from there, it became an obsession. But it was really hard because my body is not designed to be a big body and a muscular body. And then I had a lot of digestive issues. I had bronchitis when I was a kid. I had low immunity. I had all the challenges that you can possibly imagine. But I have a really good advantage that I was a really good student. And so I started researching. I went into PubMed, that is this platform where you have all these studies. And then I started realizing, how do athletes build muscle mass? How do they build power? How do they build all these things? And I started replicating, just running experiments. And then how do they eat? What is increasing muscle mass? How is muscle mass even? Why does it grow? How does my training need to be? And then over the course of a few years, I went full on. It was the only thing that was on my mind. And then after a couple of years, the body started developing. And then I started going into competitions, and then I was running different types of competitions. I was doing those things called obstacle circuit races. I don't know if you ever heard of Spartan race and all these kind of things. It's
wow, that's intense.
Yeah, you run 21 kilometers in the middle of the woods, and then you have obstacles. You need to, climb ropes and then carry boulders uphill and this kind of thing. So I was competing on those things. And I won some of these competitions. And so the thing it started blooming. And then I had friends that would ask for advice. I also want to build muscles, or, show the muscularity or compete or things like that. And then after their friends started coming, eventually there were too many people, so I needed to do something online. And then I did a program online. I invited a friend of mine who said, I have a group of people, an audience. Would you mind if I invited them to do that too? I was doing a fasting program online that I created. And then I said, yeah, you can do it. And I thought maybe some 300 people would show up, and then 10,000 people showed up. And
my God.
Yeah, and then things started going that way, right?
Amazing.
And that is the nice looking part of the story. But it also comes with a weird thing, especially when I learned to rely on my body image for a sense of self-worth. I think that's when things get tricky, especially on the performance world, on the athletic world, is that you build a body that can do a certain thing or look in a certain way, and then you start thinking as a mistake that that's your value. Because that opens doors, right? You talk to people, or you get opportunities. You feel safer because you have a different type of attention. Back in the day, I used to be bit. Now people accept me, and so you start thinking that the look of the body is where your worth as a person relies. Sometimes, at some point, that is not sustainable because it's a very extreme state of the body. And so when I couldn't keep that state anymore, this is when really the journey started.
Because you were in extremely good shape then, right? You were a bodybuilder, you had like 0% body fat.
That kind of thing.
I remember the pictures from your bodybuilding days, which is when you said you were at your lowest low.
Yeah.
And that's when the mindset shift happened for you.
That to me is when the real journey starts. Because there was a time that I realized that it had been too many years on the extreme type of life. And the body is not designed to be that extreme. And so it starts starving, and then you start running out of energy. And then I started developing this disordered eating, because bodybuilding in a way is a competitive diet, right? You see who can eat the less and exercise the more. to get the body in a certain state. So at some point, my mind was revolving around food and controlling myself not to eat the food, and I was dreaming about food, and I didn't have the stamina to go to a social event because I could lose control, and that's happening a lot with people who are relying on body appearance, not only bodybuilders but also models. There is this non-spoken agenda here. That is the body image and the eating relationship that becomes a nightmare for a lot of people. And eventually I couldn't keep that extreme version of the body anymore. And then I needed to face that situation that I built myself with an identity that is, here's my value. You can see, I can put that on a picture. When that is not there anymore, who am I if I identified myself with that image or the certain performance? And so then this is when the journey for me really started. That is the relationship with the body and relationship with food and body image and where our worth as a person is really at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can definitely understand that. I think oftentimes we base our worth, whether it's on, body image or another goal that we're trying to achieve, whether it's professional, and then we achieve it, and then we find that we still feel the same way. We haven't really gained the confidence that we thought we would gain. Maybe people didn't necessarily treat us that much differently, but we're in the same mental state. So that's when you realize something has to change in your mindset.
It was, to be honest, Biliana, it was harder for me when I was at the peak state, because that image was developed with the inner promise, right? I had a weird experience of having a certain type of body. And then I thought that my life would be solved once I reach a certain result.
Right.
And we fall, as human beings, we fall for this trap, not only in the body area, but we also fall there in the money area or in the fame area. It's like whenever I get that thing,
yeah, I'm done.
You imagine that life is going to be solved.
There's always another thing.
From
and
there,
another
you just
thing.
cruise.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. And then I remember when I reached the peak of the bodybuilding state, I realized that not only I built myself a full-time job that is keeping that body, that takes a full-time, and I had my own work to do. It was an extreme amount of energy that I couldn't keep up anymore. Plus, I felt more insecure than ever. All these problems and insecurities that I have, they were not solved. Now I was comparing myself to others, because when you're relying on body appearance, it's like, am I looking the best? So you are starting comparing yourself to others. And then with that comparison comes a lot of anxiety and realizing that you cannot keep that going for more. And at some point, that from the outside, it looks amazing. Mm-hmm. But from the inside, I was thinking, now I built this cage for myself. That I don't have energy to do other things. I don't have time to do other things. I am feeling the same insecure kid, but with a lot of muscles on top, and I cannot get out of here. Because from here onwards, it's worse. And so it's an interesting thing that happens when you put all your chips into a result. You identify with the result. But result, as anything in life, is something that is impermanent. Right? It comes and goes, and it changes and it oscillates. But if your sense of identity is there, when that thing is going through a low phase, it feels like that you are losing yourself. And so at the peak of the physical results, it was also the deepest valley of the internal well-being. And that is... We don't talk about that too much, I think that we have this romance idea. The day I achieve this result, everything's going to be amazing. And then you are there, and then you're locked inside of that. So what do I do now? Because, right? That's the...
But it's probably like a lot of athletes experience that. I think every athlete experienced that after, because everyone has their peak.
Yeah.
And then from there, they also know people get older. Natural things happen that people should understand because it's common sense, but when it's actually starting happening to you, I think more and more people speak up about that, not while it was happening, but now, after they're retired and stuff like that. I hear people talk about this, and I think it's important to talk about, because then you need to mentally prepare that it's not a bad thing, it's just an evolution of who you are, and you move on to different things. You can teach people, you can kind of spread your wisdom, whatever you learned throughout the years. How did you overcome?
I would say is the richest experience that somebody can have is to go through that, because what you're really learning in that process is that your worth was never outside of you. We talk about this, you read about that, but feeling that in your body is when you go through an experience like that. And so for me, all gratitude for that journey of understanding that I always tried to be in a certain way, to build a certain persona, to be able to accept myself. And I realized that my worth and what my source of acceptance is not on the things that I do, on the things that I achieve, is in the thing, in the essence of who I am. How do you learn that if not going through the life experience that requires that? So you see that in athletes, you see that in models, you see that in actors and actresses, or that they rely a lot on body image. People who dancers and things like that. Once that comes to an end, the career comes to an end, then you need to find that source of value inside of you. The challenge over here is where you learn those kind of things, because to learn how to build the body, I go to modern science. PubMed, you have studies, and you know how you just need to execute those things. But modern science doesn't teach you how to deal with the inner journey of finding the value inside of you. What teaches you how to do that is those books and texts that have been written thousands of years ago. The ancient wisdom, the whole, either whether it is religious or spiritual or philosophical, but that timeless wisdom that talks about, what is it that you are really? What is the nature of being? The mindful part of the thing. This is where I could find, I could navigate this type of situation. I think that the mindful practices, what you may call spiritual practices, although there's a word that's thrown around a lot, and people mean different things by it. But the metaphysical part of the thing, going the introspection. And I think that realm of things, the introspection, the reflection, the meditation, the understanding, this whole comparison, anxiety that I'm going through, at the end of the day, they are thoughts that I'm experiencing and emotions in my body. And the emotions in my body are bodily sensations. And I just sometimes blow them out of proportion, because when I get to the point that I call comparison or anxiety, I feel this thing, and then I interpret it as if I was in threat, as if something wrong is happening. But hey, I'm just feeling something in my chest right here. Maybe my ears are a bit hot. And then I'm having these thoughts, and these thoughts are language. They're a word, and they're saying things to me, but they are not even true, or they are not even mine. They are echoes from the past. When you start seeing that inner experience for what it really is, you can take a step away from them and disidentify with those thoughts, and realize that they are not who you are at the moment. They're just a thought. They're just a sensation in your body. And as you start seeing through that experience, you can realize that inside of you, there's a place that everything is okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, inside of you, there's an observer. And the observer is the same whether you're experiencing joy or terror. If it is the same, you can say that it's undisturbed. If it isn't undisturbed, you can say it's peaceful. So even in the middle of all those emotions and all those thoughts and all the comparison, if you find the place inside of yourself that is peaceful, you can say, wait, I'm not in danger. And there you can start identifying the resources that you have inside of you in your inner experience to detach yourself from the identity that says, I know my worth is in that result. That can you get to a place that anything can happen to that. Anything can happen to your body. Anything can happen to your body image. Anything can happen to the material outside, and you can still find the same integrity and peace inside of you. That is introspection. Mm-hmm. That is not diet. That is not exercise. That is not biohack. So I think the whole thing here is pairing these two things. Mm-hmm. Because you want still to be able to manipulate your material experience in a way that is pleasant to you. There's nothing wrong in wanting to develop a body that can do more things or look in a certain way. It's beautiful, but you don't want to get lost in that.
Yeah. The starting point has to be a different one. And I love the fact that you point out the inside world and getting that in order first as the basis for even fitness and longevity and all of these things that we want to see in our outside world.
Yeah.
And so once you got your mind right, so to speak, you developed two methods that I know of, which is the intermittent fasting method that you use, as well as 10x, the super slow strength training methods that you use.
Yeah.
Please tell us a little bit more about, let's start with intermittent fasting.
Yeah.
How you reach to that kind of conclusion that this is the best way, let's say, to eat, and specifically what you have found through your clients or in your research about intermittent fasting and women.
Okay, fantastic. So I see intermittent fasting as a very powerful tool. I won't say it's the best way to eat because it really depends to whom and for what purpose. But it's one of those things that is simple and powerful. Well, you have a lot of things complex and powerful, simple, but not very relevant, effective. A few things in any practice, they are very effective and they're simple at the same time. And intermittent fasting, when it comes to nutrition, is that. One, it's really good because of what it's doing to you. It's changing all the rules of your metabolism. Right? It's allowing the body to be resourceful. It's allowing the body to run without any type of external nutrients and using its own resources. It's a great way of trusting the body. And it's a great way to use the accumulation of energy. In days like today, when food is abundant and is cheap and tastes very good, it's very easy for us to eat more than what we need. And so it's also very helpful to be able to use the fat storages of the body. Most of the health complications that affect the people who we love and ourselves is because we accumulated too much over our lifetime. Right? That's when diabetes come, that's when insulin resistance come, that's when cognitive challenges later in life comes because along the life we accumulated too much and we didn't use much of that energy. Intermittent fasting says we're going to go maybe 12 hours without eating, or maybe 14 hours, and it's not that much. If you bring your dinner 2 hours before going to bed, right, then you sleep for 8 hours, so now you have 10. And then when you wake up, if you don't go straight to breakfast, you wait for 2 hours, you have 12 hours already. And then you bring 1 hour dinner earlier, 1 hour your breakfast later, now you have 16 hours already, or 14 hours. It's simpler than most people think. Mm-hmm. So one, the change in metabolism is powerful. It allows the body to burn its own fat, allows your body to release inflammation, the metabolism to be flexible. But the second thing is that behaviorally is also very powerful because a lot of people, they are in the situation that they know they need to change something in terms of health, in terms of body, but they have no idea where to start. And if you have no idea where to start, you don't move because you're overwhelmed. I don't know if I exercise, or if I change my eating, if I sleep more, or if I eat less. There's so much stuff that I don't know where to start. And so we start on something that is simple. You don't need to change what you eat. You don't need to change. You just need to change when. Get the dinner and make 1 hour earlier. Get breakfast and 1 hour later. Now you are in the field already. You took action.
And
now,
it's free.
Yeah, and it's free, exactly. So it's behaviorally, it's so powerful. You don't need to buy any supplement, you don't need to do an exam, you don't need to change all your habits. Just 1 hour earlier for breakfast, 1 hour later earlier for dinner, 1 hour later for breakfast. And then you start, now you are in the field of action. And then you start thinking, okay, how do I improve my meals? From there it starts, right? And so it's powerful in this way. Gets people started in their health journey, and it can become mental practice as well. Because the whole thing, the food relationship that we have is that we don't eat only when we are hungry. That's the main thing. We eat for a lot of other reasons, and a lot of them is if I want to procrastinate something. There's this work that is I really don't want to do. Well, let's see what do I have in the fridge, and then you go and you procrastinate that way, or you comfort your emotions as well. You're feeling maybe
dopamine.
icky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. There's an anxiety, there's loneliness, or there's something, and then you
That will make me feel better.
Right? Exactly. When you do that, you are also preventing yourself from facing your emotions and become more familiar with it. If you're always having a coping mechanism, you don't need to go face that. You don't need to go change the thing that you have to change. And so if you now have a part of the day that you're not eating, and then comes the work that you have to do, and you are like, you have no option but to work on that thing. It comes those emotions, but you don't have that coping mechanism that is going to eat and munch on something. Now you have more space to actually go face that emotion, work with it, integrate it, so it becomes a mental, spiritual practice as well.
Interesting.
And so for men and women, this is you adjust this in different ways. For women, you have different situations, whether it's a fertile part of life, so she's going through a period and things like that, or going through perimenopause and onwards. Right? When you are having menstrual cycle, there are different phases in which the body is a bit more resilient to stress, and when the body needs a bit more resources. So the first half, there's the follicular phase, right after menstruation itself, is when, up until ovulation and things like that, is when the body has more resources. And so you can have a daily fasting practice that is maybe 16 hours or 14 hours if you want to experience those benefits. And when you're going to the luteal phase, that is right before menstruation, that you realize already that the body needs more energy. It's not, the time without eating may become something too stressful. This is when it's natural to decrease the amount of fasting. 12 hours or something like that, right? Or not even every day. And so there is respecting the rhythm of the body. That's very important. I think the mistake that we usually make here is when you see intermittent fasting as a tool to lose weight, right? So if I fast more, I lose more. And then you get too excited, and then you do 16 and 18 and 24, even when you're going through a menstruation or luteal phase. And then eventually the body pushes back, right? That is a overblown hunger signal. And then you eat way more than what you should. And then you say, oh my goodness, I'd have, you regret. Like, I cannot do this and da-da-da. And I always make these mistakes, and then beat yourself up. And then it doesn't become a good practice. So it's a practice that is like the tide for the sea. It should have its rhythm and should respect the rhythm of the body in terms of energy and hunger. After menopause, then the progesterone and estrogen, the hormones that are dancing throughout the month for the fertile period, they are now in a flat state. They are not oscillating anymore, and so that oscillation is what changes the tides of the body. When they're not oscillating anymore, you can be more regular with it.
It's like a man's hormones, right?
More stable.
More stable.
Not too much of a cycle. It becomes a bit more.
There's no after menopause itself, when you the perimenopause period has passed, then there's no cycles at all, right? Estrogen and progesterone, they go to the bottom, and there they will stay in a very regular state. And so then you can be regular with your practice too. This is when you can do a longer fasting, maybe a 16-hour fasting a day. And then you can do this on every day, and you realize that that will be fine for the body. So this is the main differences. If we zoom out, we can go into details for all the minutia, but that's how the overview of the navigation of the practice.
Mm-hmm. So what about what your view on fasting just generally, that you need to start slow and you have to listen to your body, and what kind of results you still see weight loss if you do it for a long amount of time? You just need to be patient basically with it. So it's not for, I think that's what people don't understand. You're not going to get results overnight, and that's when people get frustrated and they start starving themselves, and that's where it all goes. Because I did intermittent fasting actually because of my job. It was like 5 years ago. I didn't realize I was doing it. But because I wasn't, I was not stressed. I liked my job, but it was a physically intense job. And that were my hours of eating. And that's how it turned out to be. And I lost 6 kilos within 6 months, and I didn't know. I had no idea. I didn't realize. But of course, my job was active, so I was moving all the time. But I think that the way I was eating, it wasn't the focus of my life as well. So it was just, you eat, I ate relatively healthy, but still. But the periods of times, now when I remember, I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. It was literally fasting. I think it was not too much. It was like 16 hours maybe. And it was, it actually delivered amazing results. I just didn't know I was doing it.
You just didn't have the time to eat.
Yeah, right. Basically.
This is how intermittent fasting is a very natural cycle. It's not something that we are inventing. If you think about it, breakfast was something that was invented during the Industrial Revolution. We didn't eat in the morning after waking up back in the day, right? But then industries were created, and they needed all the workers to arrive at the same time and be ready for very strong physical work. And so they said, guys, come here at 7, we serve food for everybody. And so breakfast was invented in that way. But before that, we would spend many hours without eating, and eventually, if you're hungry, maybe later in the afternoon, right? And so when it's used as a weight loss, it is one of the things that help on weight loss, absolutely. But just like anything else, you use that as a helpful tool, but not something that you get lost in it. And the whole point here is your relationship with weight loss itself. If you see weight loss as something that will improve your energy, will improve your health, will improve the look of the body, and that's an amazing thing too, that you have no rush to do this though, because your happiness does not depend on it. Then you don't need to rush. And if you don't need to rush, then you can respect the pace of fasting, maybe 12 hours, 14 hours, 16 hours per day. And then when the body, when you're going through luteal phase, you can decrease the amount of fasting. And you realize that if you're losing 250 grams to half a kilo per week, which is maybe half to 1 pound per week, that is an excellent pace. That's across all scientific studies, even for bodybuilders who are competitive weight losers, right? That is the ratio that you go. Because if you go way faster than that, when you realize the body doesn't work like that. And second, you start developing this disorder eating. All of the sudden you see binge eating, and is a natural response of starvation to the body. And so the problem is when you see weight loss as the solution for your life. You look at your body and say, I don't like that, but when I lose weight, then I'm gonna be happy with myself. So if you attach yourself to that and you start believing that you cannot be happy otherwise, then you do whatever needs to be done.
That's
right?
100% me. Yeah.
But it's most people.
Always. Yeah.
It's most people. That's why we need the introspection part, because only with the introspection we realize that, I can find the happiness where I am. I can appreciate, a even more beautiful body, but is something that I want, but it's not something that I need. If I can realize that, I can be at my own pace.
But it is hard because it's also throughout your life, your body changes.
Yeah.
Whatever you looked like when you were 20, maybe you shouldn't even look like that at 30. Maybe it's not even, that attractive, or it's just different. And it's very difficult. For me, it was the same when, I gave birth, what is it, a year ago. And then now I can't fit into anything. And then my husband is like, but you're okay. Like you like how you look. So the bad feeling only comes when I try something and I can't fit in it. But otherwise I feel great. So there's like this conflict. Then it comes like, okay, because you're working out, obviously you build muscle, because during pregnancy you lose a lot of muscle. I guess it's just a natural body reaction. But then this thing comes and you're like, okay, so what do I do now? Because you're kind of trying to lose weight, but how you were, maybe you will never be, because your body just changed over, giving birth is a difficult thing. So it's just that also that fight with, okay, but I like how I look, but then can I be like I was before? And this like dilemma that's happening, it's also very difficult, because then you're like, okay, I shouldn't eat, but then you're eating healthy already, and you're in this constant conflict. And I never thought that would be a problem, but apparently it is. And a lot of people that I speak to, they had that after giving birth. Mm-hmm. And it's wild.
And it's totally normal. There is nothing wrong with feeling that.
Yeah.
And there is nothing wrong with putting a clothes and feeling not so pleasant about it, because it used to be different back in the day. I think that the inner work that we do here is to realize that feeling is also welcome. I don't need the absence of that feeling in order to find my own happiness, in order to find my own well-being. Even in the presence of the feeling that comes when I put a clothes and doesn't fit anymore, that I don't feel very good, I don't like that. Even if that happens, I can still accept and still find that inside of me, I can still be well. I can still find happiness. I don't need to change that. Do I want? Yes. But now, if I'm in a position that I want to change it, but I don't need, even if it never changed, sometimes I will feel not so good. But even in those moments, I can be well. I can be with my own value. I can remember that my own essence is where my value is. I can still find peace with that. Now I do not depend on that changing. I think where the introspection happens is when we feel that and we start believing that the only way for me to find a source of peace and happiness in my life is if that never happens anymore. Mm-hmm. And so in that way, I start believing that my sense of happiness and well-being depends on my body changing. Mm-hmm. And that becomes a trap, because then if you believe that, what this believing means is the attachment to a result. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I attach myself. I depend on it. I need it to happen. And so if I need to happen, I will fight for it with all my might. And if I fight for it with all my might, I will do not only the 16-hour fast, I will do the 24-hour fast. And when I eat, I only eat the salad. And I'll be very harsh with myself, because when I'm very harsh, I'm more motivated. And then I arrive at that body, and I realized that my internal state is not the happiness I was thinking, because I hated myself to get there. Mm-hmm. And so that is a trap. The opposite is still, okay, there is nothing wrong in me looking at my body and not feeling super satisfied. But if I realize that even in the presence of dissatisfaction, I can still be well. I can still find acceptance. Now I have the option of working on it. if I have the option of working on it, I can respect the pace of the body. I don't need to make any extreme measures. And if I don't need to make any extreme measures, the process that takes me there is not a process of punishment, it's a process of taking care. It's a process of self-love. And then whenever I reach that result, in both cases I'll reach that result. In this case over here that's more conscious, maybe it takes more longer, but I'm not attached to that anymore. So it's fine that it takes longer. Or if it doesn't take even. But whatever result I achieve is a result that my inner experience is me taking care of myself. Is me having an attitude of love and respect. I'll be more loved because that's the process that's taking me there. So that gives me more happiness.
I love that, Ronan.
Yeah.
That's beautifully said. You're going to make me cry. It's not the process of punishment. It's a process of self-love.
Yeah.
I love that.
It does not mean that I should be okay with anything. Okay, it's
Right.
like that.
Yeah,
and it's
no,
wrong
definitely.
to-
We're not
to
for
one,
that. We're
right?
not for that.
No, I want it to be different. I want it to look better. And that's fine. But I also know that I don't depend on it. My happiness and my well-being doesn't depend on it. So I will self-care my way to it. I will self-love my way to it.
Because also I feel like the stress is a main factor, and when people can't lose weight and all of that, and you stress about it, and then it's a cycle, and that's I think the main problem with whatever you want to change in yourself. If you stress about it, it just becomes much longer and harder, the road to whatever you want.
In both ways.
Yeah.
A behavioral and hormonal.
Yeah.
The more stress you have, the periods of stress is when you see your waist increasing. Because the more cortisol you have, the more the extra energy, the extra calories of food will be stored in the abdomen, in the belly fat, right? And then there is the behavior. The more stress you have, the more you will need to, let the steam off. And so you maybe do this with food that is not helpful to the result that you want. Or you're going to have less energy or less time to go to the gym, or your sleep will be compromised. And so the more stress you have, the more counterproductive it is.
Yeah.
So Ronan, 10x and super slow strength training. Can you tell us a little bit about what this method is, how it's the basically opposite of these prolonged gym sessions that we're used to seeing, and how you got to the conclusion and the type of transformation you saw in your own body from adopting this methodology?
When we released it to the world, it felt like it was a scam because it's a very time-efficient model. What we were thinking when we were developing this model is what would it be for somebody who is very busy or somebody who doesn't want to spend all the time in the gym to still get all the strength and all the muscle mass benefits? What is the minimum work that needs to be done for most of the results? And then the result is a protocol that has 2 training sessions per week. And each one lasts 15 minutes only.
Oh, wow.
So it's 30 minutes per week instead of maybe 5 hours. Because usually people go 5 times a week, 1 hour per session, right? And so it's instead of 5 hours per week, it's half an hour. And then we felt like, but the science is very solid on this. It was not an invention of ours. We also built that on existing science that was prior. But the main point is that one, you increase the density of your training. If you go to the gym for 1 hour, and I was putting a camera and filming somebody what they're doing, that is an exercise that they are doing. There may be a leg press, and they are doing 12 repetitions, and that takes maybe 45 seconds. But then after that, they will need to take the plates off the machine. They will change things, and then they wait a little bit. Maybe they hold their phone. So there's a good 3 minutes there for another set of repetitions that takes maybe 30 seconds, 45 seconds. The really intense things is 30 to 45 seconds. So one of the things that 10x does is it moves straight from one exercise to the other. And so that you are condensing, increasing the density of the training, that all the time that you are in the gym, you are doing the work. And it also uses machines, so you don't need to set up the plates and things like that, and the bars and here and there. So it's, you go to the gym and every single second is a effective second. Then there's another thing that it does, that is the time under tension, or super slow training. Also, you see that when you are doing your training, you are doing those 12 repetitions, let's say on the leg press, and you say the first one is okay, the second one is very easy, that only the 8th session is really challenging. 9th, 10th, maybe, the last 4, the last 5. Those are the ones that are giving stimulus. The other ones, they were preparation to the stimulus. If you only do the first 8, there's no results that come from there, because you're not giving the signal to the body that it needs more strength. If you could jump straight to the last 4, so that's another thing that we did. We went straight to the heavy repetitions, to the challenging repetitions, and then we do them very slow. Because when you do them very heavy, you need them to be safer. If you do an exercise that is very heavy, there is a higher increase of injury because you can jerk the weight. You make something very heavy, you can kind of cheat, and then you pull the back or something. So back in the 70s, there was a type of training that was developed for people in later in life, for seniors who had osteopenia and osteoporosis. That is when your bones don't have density anymore. So they needed to develop more muscle mass, but their bones were not super strong. So the way that they developed in terms of training protocol was to do the exercises very slowly, because when you do very slowly, there is less acceleration, there's less impact. So it's a safer way to do your exercises. When you get injured, is usually when you do that jerking, the abrupt movement, then something happened. So you decrease the risk by a lot by doing them very slow. If you do them very slowly, you cannot afford putting the same weight. The weight needs to be a little bit lower, because you're doing these exercises very slowly. So all we're doing is that we are helping you find a weight for each exercise that is very safe, and then maximizing the amount of result per repetition by doing them very slowly. So the stimulus is greater. And then the exercise selection is very smart. So you train your full body in one training session. There are 6 exercises, and you do the 6 exercises every time that you go to the 10x session. In the 6 exercises, they cover the front of the leg, the back of the leg, the trunk and the back, and the shoulder, biceps, and triceps. So they basically cover the full body. And you do, instead of doing 3 sets of 12 repetitions, you do 1 set, but that 1 set is to failure. So usually you do 3 sets, right? Your first set, 12 repetitions, it's okay, you're kind of warming up, and then the second's a bit more challenging. The third is like, okay, I almost got there and I left. On 10x, you said, okay, we do 1 set. But if you could do only 1 set in a week, then you make sure that it is the most effective possible. So it becomes, you bring the muscle to the point of mechanical failure. Mechanical failure is when you're doing a repetition, let's say on the leg press, and eventually you get stuck in the middle. Because not even if you pray to all the gods, you cannot continue. When you reach there, what we see from research is that reaching mechanical failure gives the biggest signal to the body for muscle growth. If you keep exercising more than that, you're not just improving the stimulus for muscle growth. You already sent the message. Say, hey, we need more muscle mass. Now I can move to the next exercise. So that's the 10x method. There's 2 training sessions a week of 15 minutes each. They are very intense, but they're also very time efficient. That can give all the strength and muscle mass benefits for people who don't want to spend a lot of time in the gym, or don't have that time, but don't want to use that as okay, that's why I'm never going to do this. There is a solution for that.
Oh, I love it. I mean, I love biohacking any exercise because I hate exercise. So the shorter, the better, as long as I get the same results as, being at the gym 5 times a week. And as long as it also works for women.
Yeah.
because a lot of women are afraid of lifting heavy because they think they're going to get bulky. But I think the 10x methodology actually doesn't make you bulky. It just shapes your body, correct?
Yeah. In that sense, that is not a particularity of the 10x method. There's no strength method that makes you bulky. That making the bulkiness is more of a myth than it is true for any type of strength. What you will see is usually the opposite. You will see a lot of men that have 10 times the testosterone that women have. So they 10 times the potential to build muscle. And all of them are training 6 times a week, and they're putting an hour and a half a day, and they are almost dying for 10 years, and they are not getting bulky. Maybe you have this one, but this idea comes a lot from the competitive bodybuilding, where you have a lot of people who are, they use enhancing drugs, right? And so you not only have a woman, for example, that has a gifted genetics, because a lot of bodybuilding is genetics. If you don't have the genetics for a big body, you can do whatever you can. It's never going to get there. So you have these women who already has a gifted genetics for a muscular body. On top of that, she trains 7 times a week, maybe twice a day. On top of that, she uses a lot of performance enhancing drugs, the different types of hormones and steroids. And if she's lucky, she's going to get bulky. And so it's the idea, and then we see that, and say, okay, she goes to the gym and she looks like a Hulk, right? But there's a very exceptional case for any women or men, for that matter, that is training in a natural way, which means they're not using any performance enhancing drugs. That have they don't have the genetics of an Olympic athlete for that type of sport. The problem is if they wanted to get bulky. Then that's hard. If they don't want to get bulky, they can train a lot, and the body becomes the thing we call toned. Now, what is a toned body? What is a toned muscle? A toned muscle is a muscle that has increased in size, so it becomes more round and elongated, with a lower amount of body fat. And so if women train on 10x or even any type of traditional strength training protocol, there's no risk of getting bulky. The risk of getting bulky is if you're doing this for many years, non-stop, with steroid hormones, and still is not guaranteed.
It's very hard, basically, for women to get bulky.
Yeah. I think the biggest frustration that women may have when they're strength training is that they see no results, and they see no results, and they go to the gym for 10 years, and it's kind of nothing happened. And it's because there is this reluctancy or this hesitation on training heavy, because what really stimulates the body to develop a toned muscle is the signal that muscle is needed. And the signal that muscle is needed is given when you show the body that you're lifting something so heavy that got stuck in the middle and say, hey, see, we need more. But most of the times, the training style for women is either more on the cardio-based, right? And so the cardio-based also is the one that if you do too much, you also dysregulate your hunger signals. So this is when you see more disordered eating as well, because you're doing so much cardio. The leptin and ghrelin, that are hormones that are controlling fullness and hunger, they also dysregulate, and then you start losing control on the eating sometimes because of too much cardio. And or when it's strength training is with very light weights, and that is moving the body. Yeah, it's healthy, but if you're looking for results, it's not providing results because it's not providing the stimulus the body needs to understand that it needs more muscle. So that's why a heavy training with something that feels heavy is when women get there and they start training consistently with a strength training protocol that challenge the body, they realize, why didn't I do that before? Because when I wanted the results, I was just not applying the strategy that takes to the results.
That makes a lot of sense. Ronan, you recently launched the Vitality operating system.
Yeah.
And I believe that's something you discovered, that there's basically a gap in the wellness industry, particularly maybe for high achievers, like really busy people, founders, and so forth. What was the gap that you realized needed to be filled, and what is the Vitality operating system exactly?
Uh-huh. This is a 1-year program that we work closely together on developing vitality, energy, and longevity for people who want to experience life with more colors, let's say. I think as an athlete, or a lot of people that are connected to the body, you see the body as a end goal. But I think the body is an enabling system. It makes no sense for me to dedicate my entire life so that my body is in a certain way, and then what do I do with that body? No, the body is here to provide me with more resources for me to have better life experiences. I want to have a body that is capable of playing with my children and my grandchildren when they come, to have all the energy so when I come back from work and I have the things that I really want to do, I'm not exhausted and I cannot go after goals that are meaningful to me because I'm tired all the way. And so for me, the Vitality OS is developing this enabling system, developing all the exercise and nutrition and sleep and mindfulness, but also the inner work side of things, so I can have a body that has the highest longevity, the highest amount of energy, but I don't get lost in that thing. I use the body as something that serves my life, so I can do more of it's usually a program for people who are already in their 40s, they already built their career. But now what is the bottlenecks, that they are tired or they are exhausted and they are in that phase that they don't know if they're going to keep up with the kids. So how do I recuperate the vitality of the body? We work very closely in a very small group for a whole year together. So it's a project, okay, let's make that year that we change the trajectory of our health. That's very interesting. Vitality OS.
Yeah. I love that.
Thank you so much for coming and speaking to us. It's literally, I feel like it's been 15 minutes since we started. So we're way over time, by the way, but literally it flew by. You're so knowledgeable and so inspirational. Thank you so much. I'm sure everyone who listens to the podcast or watches the podcast will, get a lot of benefits and learn a lot. So thank you so much for joining us today and being a part of it.
I really appreciate it.
And thank you from me also, Ronan. Your wisdom goes so way beyond, fitness and health. I love the connection you make between, the spiritual and mindset and fitness and health. That's really, really important. And for our listeners, if you want to learn more about Ronan's work, please check him out on Instagram. You can follow him at Ronan Diego Insta. You can go to his homepage, ronandiego.com. And of course, you can find him on Mindvalley. He has 2 amazing courses. Check them out. One is Beyond Fasting and the other one is 10X. And if you've enjoyed this episode, please share it with someone who maybe feels burned out in their body and they're looking for real health and real vitality and sustainability in their health and fitness. And please don't forget to subscribe, like, and leave us any comments below on future guests you want to see or any questions you might have. And I'll see you then.
Bye and Merry Christmas.
Merry
Christmas.
Oh,
Merry Christmas episode. Yes.
This will air way in next year, but doesn't matter.
Yeah, but we were filming during Christmas,
Yes.
so it's important.
True. Agreed.
That's amazing.
Thank you so much.
Thank-